Good afternoon, everyone. What it's worth is a good lunch, hopefully. I want to welcome everyone back from lunch. I know people are going to be filtering in here. And so I wanted to share with you a couple of things that are coming through on Twitter. First, I have some very exciting news. We are now trending third on Twitter, and the Donald has dropped out of the top 10 in Twitter. But I want to share with you what's happening when we start hashtagging what it's worth and what it's worth to me. We hear that financial security is worth human dignity and the liberation of the mind. This from College and Community Fellowship, who we'll be hearing from in a little bit. Another person chimes in and says, what it's worth to me, making it so that my financial life and that of my family isn't one big game of whack-a-mole. We have some people responding to our what it's worth authors. Jess Hathaway comments on Diedrich's remarks saying, let's make asset development more than a theoretical concept. And Vivian Nixon, who we'll hear from in a minute, says benefits will never provide financial security or stability. So there's lots for us to be talking about. So as we get started for our next panel here, if you have ever been to a CFED conference, and I think many of you have, and if you haven't, save the date, September 28th to 30th, 2016 for the Assets Learning Conference. I hope you're all there. I'm here in DC. But you may be familiar with the conversations with clients that are a bit of a hallmark of the conferences that we hold. We believe it is absolutely essential that the world see the stories of success that come from our field every single day. So we often invite those who have participated in those programs, who have improved their own financial well-being, to share their stories. Sometimes we know we have to really see what it feels like to navigate through a system that can often feel stacked against us, to believe just how much is possible. Today's summit is no exception. We wanted to bring you the voices of 3 people who have participated in innovative programs that are highlighted in the books. These people have done things like better manage their finances, learned how to grow a business, improved credit scores. And so often we hear stories of people entering these programs intent on fixing one aspect of their financial life and come out having transformed their perspective on what it means to take control of their financial life. So Angela, Maria, and Nicole, who are going to talk with us later in just a minute, are 3 perfect examples of how that has happened. But before we welcome those clients to the stage, I have the honor of introducing Brandee McHale, who will facilitate our next discussion. Brandee wears many hats. She is president of the Citi Foundation, where she has made possible millions of dollars in philanthropic commitments to the growth of financial health and well-being, including the money that made what it's worth a reality, for which we are very grateful. And if you aren't one of those people who have to read a book from beginning to end in order, then I would recommend flipping to page 333, that's 333, to see Brandee's essay, where her call for other philanthropists to get behind this movement in very deep and meaningful ways may be one of the most important assets we have for advancing the work that we set out to do with this book. I should also mention something else about Brandee, which is that she's not just one of our best allies, she's one of our best thought partners. And we often talk about how funders can be strong thought partners, but Brandee lives and breathes that idea every day. And so just so it doesn't seem like I'm saying all of this so that you'll fund the next series of books, I will point out that you are also the chair of CFED's board, for which we are very grateful. So please join me in welcoming Brandee McHale to the stage.
A great intro. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Wow. It's so great to be here. It's so nice to see so many of you that I've worked with over the years, and it's equally great to see so many new faces and so many new friends and stakeholders. So thank you all for being here. I do want to just point out the obvious, that, funders don't usually actually have to do the work. That's why it's probably the greatest job in the world. And so when I agreed to write a chapter in the book, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to write a chapter in the book. So I do actually want to thank my colleague Darius Sheehan, who's been with me on this journey for many years, and Kate Griffin both, who actually kept pushing me to make sure that this happened. They told me I couldn't go on vacation this summer until we were done. And also, I do want to acknowledge one thing about David Erickson that people don't know, which is that he's a really good editor, but I want to thank him because when I finally said, David, I'm done, no more edits, he's still talking to me. So thank you so much. During the past few years, household financial health and well-being, income inequality, and growing poverty have been featured more prominently in the national dialogue. I think it's incredible that we have presidential candidates that are running for office and actually talking about these issues. I don't remember this ever being front and center before. And while it's been heartening to see, these conversations tend to focus on what the challenges look like today, and not what we can and what we have to do to move the needle forward. That's why I'm so pleased that I'll be joined in just a moment by our panelists, who are going to talk about, and we're going to lift up innovative strategies and policies that can help more families become financially secure. I'm not talking about some nice programs that help a few people. It's not about doing the right thing for some, but creating an enabling environment for all. But this is easier said than done, as we've already heard throughout the morning, because it's a complex issue. And people, and in particular, their behaviors around money are complex. There's a huge psychological component to financial health that we can't lose sight of. And far too many families, and I hope we'll spend more time talking also about far too many communities, don't believe they can move beyond their current financial standing today and even tomorrow. And this isn't just an issue that's affecting lower-income households. As just a couple days ago, there was an NBC poll that came out that said that 60% of Americans actually believe that their children will be worse off than they are. We need to change this mindset. We need to shift this mindset. When defining success in the area of financial capability, it's logical to focus on money, it's easy to quantify, and it can serve as a measurable indicator. How much have people saved? How much debt has gone down? How have their credit scores improved? But for all of us that work in the financial empowerment field, and I'm using that term empowerment because I think it's incredibly important, we can't lose sight of the purpose of our work. It's to inspire people to believe that they can reach their financial goals, and we need to work to eliminate the roadblocks that stand in their way. There's so many things in this book that are great, but if you just open the front cover, you'll see a Sir Isaac Newton quote. I've never been to any asset building or financial capability event that quotes Sir Isaac Newton, but it says, "We build too many walls and not enough bridges." We need to be in the bridge building business. Now, I'm not suggesting that we toss aside all of our efforts to measure our work or quantify results, but we need to balance these qualitative measures of success, the quantitative measures of success with qualitative measures. I believe that empowering people to believe in their future is just as important as how much an individual has saved at any given time. As I write in my own chapter, societies where fatalism has taken hold are communities that stop innovating and inventing. But if fatalism is contagious or pessimism is a self-fulfilling prophecy, the good news is that there's nothing that beats the inspirational power of hope. As partners in the effort to help households better manage their financial lives, We need to take a long-term systems-level approach that considers not only how to get people to start saving or improving their credit scores, but how do we restore this sense of optimism. Economic opportunity is inextricably linked with the American dream. For too many people, this just feels like a pipe dream today. We can and we have to restore faith in that dream for all Americans to help our nation as a whole prosper. With us today are three trailblazing organizations representing microlending, workforce development, and justice that are doing just that. They'll talk a little bit about the methodologies that they use, but at the heart, what really links them together is that they're restoring faith in the American dream by creating on-ramps to that financial success bridge and eliminating the far too many off-ramps that currently exist. Let me actually call up our three. Let me call up Janie, Vivian, and Seung, and have you come sit. And I'm going to introduce you as we start, because we have a lot we want to cover in a short period of time. Vivian Nixon, who's joining us first, is a national criminal justice reform advocate and executive director of College and Community Fellowship, a New York City nonprofit dedicated to eliminating barriers to higher education for people involved with the criminal justice system. She started at College and Community Fellowship out of a fundamental belief that a lack of access to education severely impedes one's ability to escape the cycles of poverty and criminal recidivism. Next to her is my longtime friend, Janie Barrera, who's the founding president and CEO of LiftFund, formerly known as Acción Texas, where she works to level the financial playing field for entrepreneurs who historically have faced considerable obstacles when seeking the financing they need to start and expand a business. Created in 1994, today, LiftFund has grown to hold the nation's largest microlending portfolio, providing not just loans, but management training to microenterprises of all kinds, from startups to much more established businesses. And finally, we have Seung Kim as the program director of LISC's Family Income and Wealth Building Unit. Seung helps LISC offices throughout the country design and establish financial opportunity centers. These are places where clients can receive employment services bundled with financial coaching. Today's LISC's network has grown to more than 75 financial opportunity centers in 33 cities nationwide. So let me welcome them. But as a grant maker, it sometimes can be easy to forget that our work actually isn't about the organizations we make grants to. It's not about the winning proposal or the independent evaluation or even convenings and events like this. It's ultimately about the people that these organizations serve. And so I'm deeply honored today to introduce to all of you three individuals who have worked with each of our panelist organizations and have generously agreed to join us and to share their story and their journey and their insights with us. So please join me in welcoming Maria Magdalena Williams. Where are you, Maria? Come on up. Who is the owner of Majestic Events by Maria. Angela Diaz from College and Community Fellowship. And Nicole Richards, a LISC Financial Opportunity Center client. Excellent. So the one thing that I'd said was, I want this to be as though we're all hanging out together, and we're going to try to have a conversation. We will have time for a little bit of Q&A, so start thinking now if you have any specific questions. Okay. My traveling mic is on. All right. So let's see. Vivian, let's start with you. You are working with a population that may actually have the steepest hill to climb. We use a lot of metaphors today. We've got bridges, we've got ramps, and then we've got some really, really steep hills. So can you talk a little bit about your work and how you really drive success?
Sure. So for the people that we work with at College and Community Fellowship, it really is not a hill we're pushing up. We're trying to move mountains. words and phrases have been invented to describe the era we're living in now: mass incarceration, collateral consequences of conviction, mass criminalization. And we're living in a society where 7 million people are either in a federal or state prison or cycling in and out of local jails. 70 million people in America have a criminal record history on file. 70 million. That is more than 1/4 of the population. So when we talk about building financial security and financial capability among lower income people and people on the fringes, those 70 million people with criminal history records are part of the folks we're talking about, and part of all of our work, not just the work of those of us who are focused on criminal justice. Because 70% of those who go into the criminal justice system were making less than $12,000 a year when they went in. At College and Community Fellowship, we started out by understanding that higher education was a beneficial strategy to help people get back on their feet and get into living wage careers where they could develop economic security for themselves and their families. We knew from earlier research that while 66% of people who go into the system recidivate within 3 years, those who are able to obtain a bachelor's degree reduce the recidivism rate to 5.6%. And if they get a master's degree, the recidivism rate is 1%. So at College and Community Fellowship, we've always known this and understood it. What we learned when students started coming to us after prison to finish their college degrees was that there was something deeper we were missing. We were missing the ways our students were getting exploited by proprietary schools. We were missing the ways they were getting exploited by payday loans, them not understanding their credit reports. So we worked with the Financial Clinic on a new initiative they have in New York City called New Ground, and we cross-trained all of our academic counselors to be quasi-financial counselors. Every student that comes through our door now gets their credit report pulled. They get a set of recommendations. If they need debt repair, they get a professional certified financial aid counselor to work with them who is a volunteer. They walk away with a financial plan and a plan to develop wealth going forward. We do first-time home buyer education programs and all other kinds of financial services that we never dreamed we would do because we thought we were just helping people get college degrees, but we know now this goes hand in hand. And one more minute, I came to College and Community Fellowship not as some big-time graduate from an Ivy League school who wanted to run a nonprofit. I came to College and Community Fellowship as a student. 10 years later, I'm running the organization. I own my own home. I am financially secure. No one in my parents didn't even own their home. My grandparents didn't own their own home. This works. This is a thing that needs to be scaled up, and I'm hoping that all of you are part of helping that happen.
I told Vivian she wasn't allowed to make me cry, but you can all feel free to tear up if you'd like to. It's fine. So Angela, you're with College and Community Fellowship. Do you agree with what Vivian has said? Any of this resonate with you? Can you tell us a little bit about your story?
I agree with her 200%. I came to College and Community Fellowship to get help to go be placed in college and pursue my psychology, bachelor's degree in psychology. I was contacted by Letitia Boyd, and she told me that they had the financial programs, and they had counselors that will help me with my financial needs. I'm a single parent. I pay for tuition for my son to go to college, and I am planning to get a doctor's degree in psychology. And who's gonna lend me money if I'm not financially stable? That's when CCF came in and gave me a lending hand. I met with a counselor, I consolidated all my debt into one monthly payment that I can afford, and the sky is the limit.
I love that. That's exactly the point. So let me ask you a question about meeting with the financial counselor. You'd had a dream and a goal that was education focused. How did money challenges continue to relate to that goal? Was it that financial challenges just, you had the will, you had a sense, I want to do this? And how often did you meet with the counselor, and what role did that play in your life?
I met twice with the counselor, first for an interview to evaluate my economic situation, and then to set up the plan to make monthly payments towards my debt. But it doesn't stop there, because in order for me to be financially successful, I have to find ways to save money as well, not to pay my debt, but to save money, and that's what we're working on now.
You know, I asked the follow-up question because as we talked today, this issue came up in an earlier panel about the scarcity of resources. And what you're describing is not a costly, multi-year intervention. You're doing most of the work, right?
Yes.
And so what you really needed was that touch point and that guidepost to sort of help you with the initial plan. And so I think it's one of the things that we can take away from this is that this is actually a very cost-efficient and cost-effective intervention when you think about what the payout is at the end from both a social and financial standpoint. Seung, so there are people who will be listening to us today, and there may be some people watching the simulcast who are sitting back and saying, there was one answer for all of this. Just get people a job. Get them a job that pays them a decent wage, and that's all that they need, and we're overcomplicating things. So can you talk a little bit about the work that you do, and would you agree or disagree, and tell us about the importance of a job?
Absolutely. So, I mean, the job is definitely an important factor in folks' ability to achieve some level of economic opportunity. But we learned actually from folks in the communities through quality of life planning that the job alone really wasn't enough. And even when people did get full-time employment, which is not everybody, who we're serving and who we're getting jobs for, but even when they did get full-time employment, folks were still struggling to make ends meet. And we started to think about, gosh, are people working and does it feel like it pays to work? So many folks were still struggling to make ends meet. So we started looking at opportunities for program interventions of integrating financial coaching and access to income supports into workforce development programs. We learned a lot from the Annie Casey Foundation, who founded that idea, but then we took that idea and we were able to turn it into an approach that we scaled up through community-based partners who are our financial opportunity centers. We learned that by integrating financial coaching, by helping people develop a budget, by helping people look at what's on their credit report, by helping people look at the whole situation, that we're really able to get them a leg up to get ahead. And like you were saying earlier, it's not just about LISC or about the financial opportunity centers themselves, but we're really fortunate to meet with some fantastic, amazing, hardworking people that are coming into our centers, into our organizations, because as you said, the work is really client-driven. The clients have to have a vision. The clients have to have the desire to get ahead. And we're able to take financial coaching and really draw that confidence and draw that esteem and kind of get it done attitude out of the clients. So we're really excited to be joined by Nicole today because I actually worked as a financial coach back in 2006, and that's how I got into this world. And I had the really great benefit of meeting people like Nicole on a daily basis. And we're just so excited to have her joining us to share a little bit more about her.
So Nicole, tell us your story.
Well, what originally brought me to the center was that I was unemployed. I had been unemployed for almost a year and heard that there was this place around the corner that could help you. I went in. My immediate goal was employment. I need a job. I need a job. During that process, I did meet with their financial counselor, and she emphasized the having a budget. I didn't feel that it applied to me, because when you don't have income or you don't have money to budget, a budget is not important to you. But she brought it to me in such a way as to, what do you need? What do you want? What do you have coming in? And that's basically how she explained it to me, and how I could see the necessity for a budget. If you only have so much and you have this much to do, you have to make a way to be able to make that happen. Fixed my credit, that was one of the things that I wanted to focus on as well. I have older children, 2 in college, or well, 1 in college, 1 on the way. I wanted to go back to school, so just repairing my credit was a very big thing.
So I'm going to actually ask both Angela and Nicole something. You have 2 things. One is you had dreams for yourselves, and then you've talked about your children. So tell me a little bit about this ability to be able to balance both, and how that helped to motivate you. And the other thing is, it's not always a straight path to your dream. So just, share with us a little bit of insights about sort of the things that may sort of knock people off of the path and what it takes to get back up.
You're supposed to lead your children by example. So if you don't make your life better, what are you teaching them? I instill in him, you have to go to college, you have to better yourself. But if he doesn't see the drive in me, he could say, oh, if you're not doing it, why should I? And it's a shame to see that you try to guide them to the path of what's correct, but not necessarily being successful. That's the only legacy I could leave. I was inspired to better myself. I was inspired to pursue my dreams. And that's what I leave you with. And hopefully it will work.
Yeah, just to piggyback, yeah, you do definitely have to lead by example when it comes to your children, because children learn through example. You can say what you want and tell them what to do, but they will see you and basically mimic your behavior.
I think that I wanted to push on the point because I think when we talk about, and I'll use the branches of the tree that we talked about earlier, that a really powerful part of that tree, perhaps maybe it's not the branch, but it's actually the tree trunk, is the role of family. And when we talk about this work in this space, we tend to think of it sometimes as, well, what are a set of services that we can deliver to families, but often forget that families themselves and adult family members can serve as such an incredible role model and supporter. And it's not just, the benefit isn't just for the next generation, but I'm now hearing that the benefit is for you as well, because it also pushed you to continue on. And we talk about the psychology of these issues, the psychology of financial health. We've got to really think about then, what is the role of the family and role models? And how important can role models be? Someone to look up to, someone that's made it, when you may be living in a place where many others haven't. Vivian, you want to comment?
Yes, so it's interesting, just, today is Tuesday, just yesterday, we had a meeting in New York City. We've been working with the Department of Justice Interagency Reentry Council over a year to hold meetings across the country where the Reentry Council, under the direction of the Attorney General, is listening to rooms full of people who have criminal records about the struggles they're going through. And a young man got up and told a story yesterday in that meeting that when he was growing up, he didn't have a family looking out for him. Both of his parents were addicted. He was literally on the street most of the time. So the gang became his family. And he said it wasn't until someone, an adult, took an interest in him and helped him get involved in education, and he eventually got an associate's degree, that he understood that he had worth. But even so, he's making $15 an hour living in New York City, and that doesn't even cover his rent. Because in New York City, the average rent is almost $2,000 a month for a 1-bedroom. So It takes a tremendous amount of fortitude and hope. But the last thing he said is, when I look around this room, and there were over 70 other formerly incarcerated men and women in that room, and I see your successes, and I see your drive and your push forward, I refuse to give up. So setting examples happens in many ways within families and within communities.
Yes. Thank you. So Janie, a lot of people in this room have, I would describe, if you were to say, well, what field do you work in, would say, I work in the financial inclusion space. And a big piece of the financial inclusion theory of change is that that a lack of financial products is actually is a big gap, and that the products are really, it's an important thing that if we address that, we're already getting ourselves further there. So can you just talk a little bit about what your organization does and sort of what your reaction is to this idea of, I'm reminded by the comments this morning that there is no one thing or one silver bullet, if you had to pick one thing, is it the product? Is that what we should be really prioritizing?
Brandee, I want to start by adding a family story, because families are very important. When I was growing up, I was growing up in Corpus Christi, Texas, and my parents had a Mexican restaurant. So as 14, that was my very first job, was being a waitress in Corpus Christi. And after 20 years of very hard work, they ended up with nothing. They ended up only with Social Security because they were not good at their finances. And that's what I remember. And so as I do this work, in terms of mission work, it is about leveling that financial playing field. And so how do we do that? Because even growing up as well, we never talked about the stock market or savings programs or anything like that. In good Mexican-American families, your stock market was your rental place, right? You would buy the next door neighbor's house and have that, and rental income was coming in, right? So we were not part of the big financial playing field. And so I think in the work of LiftFund, what we're doing is trying to level that financial playing field. The average credit score of one of our borrowers is 580. The cutoff score at the banks is usually around 680, and we still have a 96% repayment rate. So what we've learned in these 21 years is how to mitigate that risk. So when we first started 21 years ago and talking about product, it was peer group lending, because when micro-lending came to the United States, that's what everybody thought was going to be that silver bullet, peer group lending models and very small dollar loans. We quickly found that the work that you can't run a program in the United States like you do in developing countries. There are different regulations and usury laws, collection laws, and everything else that we have here in the United States. So over the years, we have changed our products to be able then to allow our customers to work wherever they need to be. So everything from a $500 loan, now we go up to $250,000. We actually are a servicer for the SBA 504 program. And we created what we call our promise loan. You promise to pay us back. And that was you would go through our underwriting system, and then you didn't even qualify for a LiftFund loan. But we knew the loan officer could see that that person had character. And so there was a behavioral study or behavioral test that the customer was given, and if they passed it, pretty much if you could breathe, that's how you passed it, right? But if you passed it, you got one of these promised loans because you had an idea, and in Spanish they call it las ganas. You had the will, the want to be successful, like you were saying as well. I mean, that the families have and individuals have. So with that promised loan, it's non-collateralized. So we hand them a $5,000 loan to be able to see if they can grow the business. And that's how I think Maria found us.
So Maria?
So yes, that's how I found LiftFund. Used to be Axion. I had a dream. I had a business model that I wanted to do. I worked for a global company. And at that company, I was a benefit analyst. Once I was laid off, I had to find a way to make money. Thought about going back to school. Looked at the curriculum in the catalog, and oh my goodness, I'll go be a nurse. Everyone needs nurses. It's not what I wanted to do. Found out about event planning and thought, this is what I want to do. This is what I've been doing for this global company. They owe me lots of money, by the way. So, got that together and started on my own, and I knew I needed to go to the next level. I wanted to take my company to the next level. Got with a counselor at LiftFund, and they spoke to me and told me no. But the no was with a yes following it. We will help you get to the yes. We will show you how to improve your your credit score, so you can come back to us and we can help you get that financial backing that you need to take your company to the next level. And that's exactly what they did. They have done their time with me. And I now have a storefront. I'm a full-service event planning company. And that's how LiftFund has helped me. And Janie and all of the staff are very ethical. They also taught me business ethics. I think that's very important. And I will always speak on their behalf, always. 15 minutes before I got the call to come to this, I had just spoken to another entrepreneur. I was singing their praises, and I said, if ever they needed to speak, someone to speak on their behalf, I'm their champion. I'm their biggest fan. And the phone rang, and I screamed. And if I didn't have a witness, I would think I was crazy. And that's why I'm here. These programs, I'm listening to all of them. And I'm very proud to be a LiftFund client. I call them my family, because they have encouraged me, they have taught me, and they have helped me move forward. And I keep planning.
See, I also told you not to make me tear up and cry. So, I really want to try to get to, I want to ask a question of any of the panelists who want to jump in. You've each really hit on this idea that it's not about just yourself. And that fundamentally, one of the things I'm picking up and hearing is that one of the ways we're really going to advance progress for ourselves and for others is also by this idea of giving back and creating a sense of larger community. That isolation can perhaps be one of the biggest barriers that we face. So can you talk a little bit about this sense of how this what I call it the double benefit, that you're quantifying, you're creating impact at the household level, but this broader sense of community in others. And how is this really, how do we make the case that this really helps to create a strong, healthy economy?
Well, from my perspective, one of the things that particularly affects the population I work with is the continuing shame and stigma of having a criminal record history. And the process by which even 20 years later, in some states where there's no expungement, you have to reveal that to an employer upon applying for a job. So if you have lost your job and you're middle-aged and you need to find a new job, in certain localities, that record always shows up, and it's never going away. It's that shame and that stigma. Having a community of other people who understand that, who are willing to support you, who can educate employers and other members of the community about the need to really believe what we say about second chances. Second chances are not real unless we dismiss the idea of those who are deserving of empowerment and those who are not. I think we can all really benefit from the idea that punishment is not a solution to our criminal justice problem. Giving people opportunity is the solution. The prisons are full of people who have been traumatized, who have post-traumatic stress disorder, who are mentally ill, who have substance abuse histories and other medical issues that may have helped lead them to incarceration. Compassion is the thing that brings communities together. And I really want to stress that point, because I deal with people every day who are carrying that load with them, that stigma, that shame, that just makes them want to disappear every time they have to answer that question.
Maria, why don't you talk about the incubator in that space that you have on your employees?
The space that we have, we call it a creative space. It's in a revitalized area of San Antonio, which is right on the outskirts, west side of San Antonio. For me, I speak to my co-tenants and talk about going into the community and bringing the community in and being a part of what we're all doing, whether it's finding employees and creating jobs within that area. I think a big part is, yes, hope. When people see and you tell your story and you talk about all the wonderful things that you're now accomplishing, and people see that, when you give people hope, it makes a world of difference. LiftFund gave me hope when all the banks told me no. They made me feel that yes, I can do it. And I'm so committed to bringing people with me, bringing other small businesses, bringing, like I said, the people that are in the community to show them that they too can have a dream and see that dream to fruition. In the words of Willy Wonka, we are the dreamers of our dream. So we have to take that and make it happen.
Maria, you have my vote for president. I just want to say. You know, I want to, the organizations that are represented here today, each of you are visionary leaders, and you're doing incredible work. But it's not just about each of you, and the voices that you bring to this dialogue isn't about just the services that you deliver, but we also need to really raise up and amplify and create a movement. And this idea of how do we share these success stories? How do we get these stories out into the media? How do we explain how this work actually has this multiplier effect? Events like this are important. We need to be speaking to millions more people. So any thoughts, if there was a way to continue to get the word out, advice, guidance to all of us, thinking about this idea of what action steps can we take in order to continue to amplify and raise up what works and really get policymakers, private sector, other practitioners to adopt these successful approaches?
I think it starts at the dining room table in each and every one of our homes. That if you hear something and you learn something new about what's going on regarding supporting people who need to build wealth or build economic security, talk about it with your family, with your friends. Help the idea become more understood and more popular. For many years, the poor in our society, the convicted in our society, the mentally ill in our society have just kind of been under the radar because we don't talk about it. It's kind of like the big American secret that there are millions of children living in poverty and hungry at night. Let's start having that conversation at our dining room tables. And I think that's where we start.
And I would take it from the people that want to help but really don't know how to help. And I would start with different groups like bankers, for example. They don't want to say no, but they just can't. They're regulated. And so how do we inform more bankers across the country? And by the way, there's something happening in Los Angeles in February that's being sponsored by CDFI and the Federal Reserve and FDIC and so on, which is a big room full of bankers. How can we tell the story to the bankers, not in a workshop, but in a plenary? So that you can tell everybody the whole story, and they're captive audience. They don't have to go off somewhere else.
I'd like to say, maybe just to take a step back and celebrate some of the good things that we've been seeing in the field so far. We're really excited when we heard about the Workforce Innovations Opportunity Act that got signed into law in July of 2014. It feels like for all of those who are in the asset building field, in the financial coaching space, and for those of us who've been able to work through groups like the Financial Literacy Education Commission and others that we're talking about today, it seems like we've done some good things. We've messaged some to get financial coaching to be now an allowable use of WIOA. So as I think about our work with financial opportunity centers and integrating financial coaching into workforce development in a sustainable way, I think that's a really great first step. And I have to also just say thank you again to the Citi Foundation, who was our very early supporter in scaling up our Financial Opportunity Center work before we had the data and the stories to share. So I do want to say that as well. But in terms of thinking about what more we can do, I think you're exactly right. It's just having these conversations with anybody who will listen. If you are practitioners out in the field delivering services, it's let's figure out ways of how we can address the whole person, how we can integrate financial coaching in. If you are, in the banking world, also thinking about the types of impacts you can make through your organizations in helping practitioners really reach more folks like these amazing, powerful, wonderful women who are up here today, who are so brave in sharing their stories with us. But I think that this is still just, I think, the beginning of this conversation. It's fantastic that now there's a national stage and a platform around our work. And like you said, I think it's just talking about it more and more.
Fabulous. I will say, we had a follow-up from the last panel, which was to talk about disabilities and the disability community. I am reminded, and thank you, this is a very powerful set of women that are up here. And I do think that, yeah, exactly. And I do think that the issue of gender is one that, as a follow-on sort of research and dialogue topic, is one that we haven't looked at enough in this space. And there are, I think, many interesting issues that are affected by gender in households, so more to come on that. So, let's talk. What are you guys thinking? Questions? We'll start right here.
Thank you. Let me stand where I can see you all, because you're all so amazing. You've been giving me chills throughout this entire conversation, so thank you. My name is Lee Tivell. I'm with CFED. Vivian, you've been talking about something that's sparked some thinking for me. There's so much good work happening, so many good new ideas, new programs, new ways of integrating, new ways of partnering. And yet, I think about the structural and practical barriers that get in the way, right? Vivian, you're talking about, 20 years after a crime, here's somebody is having paid their debt to society and still can't take advantage of opportunity. So I'm interested in thinking about, we're getting some really great ideas about what works, but we also need to be thoughtful about what barriers are still in the way. What barriers do we need to take away so that we can take advantage of those things that work? So this is a question really for anyone on the panel. What are the mountains that get in the way, right? What are the other mountains that we need to be thinking about from a public policy point of view, from a structural point of view, from a practical point of view? Things large or small, what are the rocks that get in the way of climbing that mountain?
Well, the current administration has been fabulous on these issues to the extent that you compare them with other administrations. For instance, the president has announced that he's going to do an executive order to ban the box on federal employment.
Yeah.
But it could be even more impactful if he banned the box for contractors of the federal government, because that's 25% of the workforce. So we have some ways to go. There are tools in place. We just need to expand the tools that are already working. And New York State has a very strong anti-discrimination law for people who have criminal records. Not every state has that. Bringing people back to the voting polls who have criminal records and making them feel like full citizens. There's so many things that we can do and that some states are doing. We just need to keep pushing that mountain until it moves.
And I'll answer that question from as a financial intermediary and CDFI. So we're a financial institution without depositors. What do we need? Strengthen our balance sheet to be able to continue our work. It is like, that is the biggest mountain that we have to climb or push.
Yeah, I would say it's a really complicated set of barriers. I came into this field actually having worked in the investment finance for some odd years. I came into financial coaching because I wanted to spend a year of volunteer kind of doing something good, and I realized that this work of trying to help people really achieve a level of economic opportunity is so completely complicated and requires every level of partnership and that we could even think of. And when we think about what are the barriers, I have to say I am really proud and happy to work at a place like Local Initiatives. I don't know, if, for those of you who are not familiar with our work, our vision is really that every low-income neighborhood can survive, and not only survive, but thrive. And we provide the capital and the know-how to folks, to organizations in the communities, and really started in physical redevelopment. So thinking about the conversation earlier when it comes to health and housing and how to impact bricks and mortar. And then about 10 years ago came into the space of trying to help not just places get better, but the people in those places. Then when we started investigating more into our financial opportunity centers, we realized we serve over 20,000 people a year, and the folks that come through our centers are over 90% are in the lowest quintile of American household distribution. We tried to drill down even further to figure out, okay, well, what's going on? Why is that? And why aren't we able to get people into better wage jobs? It's because people lack the basic skills, basic literacy, numeracy levels that they need to get into skills training, to get into higher wage jobs. And so, you know, and then you also think about, well, why can't they get to school, or why can't they get to their jobs sometimes? And there's all these issues of crime and safety and all of these things that I'm not saying, I'm not describing all these barriers.
Take a breath, Seung, take a breath, it's okay.
Not describing these barriers to say that they're insurmountable,
Yeah.
because again, when I see, you know, our lovely folks up on the panel with us today, people can achieve. If they believe it, they can achieve it. And so there are so many barriers that exist, but I'm really hopeful as I see the impact of the work, and I'm really hopeful as I see everybody here in this room to think about ways that we can work better together to overcome some of these barriers.
Thank you. So I want to actually ask a question of Nicole, Angela, and Maria. There are, for every one of your success stories, there are lots of people who aren't on the same path. And what was it, and what is it that we should all keep in mind? Because it's not just about the idea, you know, there was that movie Field of Dreams, they say build it and they will come. But there was something about this match between your intention and then the opportunity was there. There was a door that was open, but somehow there was like, you have to step into it. Anything that we should keep in mind, because this isn't, again, just about building programs, but also reaching people and reaching out and gathering more people in. Anything from your own experience you would share with us?
Well, I would like to say the services work. What's being offered, if you're willing and open to it, it will work for you. However, like you said earlier, the work is really for you to do. If you don't have a follow through, or if you just don't have it in you to do it, you won't do it. You know, failure was not an option for me as a single mother of 3. It's just not. So they were there to help, and I was there to take in whatever they were willing to help me do.
I think that that sentiment, that failure is not an option, is one that for many families that are struggling, it takes a lot to get to that point, but I hope when people feel that way that there are more places like the Financial Opportunity Center, so that when you feel that point, you have the support that you need. Angela, anything you want to add?
Yes, I believe that information is key. Sometimes you're looking for a service that you don't know it exists. You cannot take a no for an answer because there'll be a lot of information on what barriers exist, but not a lot of information on how you could go past that. And I think that if more information was available to individuals like me, the outcome will be different.
Maria, you get the last word.
Okay. Information, determination, and focus. You have to keep that in the forefront of your mind. You can't let the no's let you think that I'm not going to do it. No, the no's are what strengthen you to say, I'm going to show them I can do it. That's what kept me going. I'm sure that's what kept all of you going. And I also think that we need to hold our leadership, hold their feet to the fire. These are great initiatives. These are wonderful programs that everyone, I don't know, in San Antonio we have districts, so we have city council members. You know, those city council members should be looking for Janie to say, we need you to come help and grow economic development. We need LiftFund to help us make these programs happen in all of these areas that we are revitalizing. I think that above everything else, plus the client themselves being determined and focused to make it happen, then it's all a win-win. Everyone grows.
Can I just say one thing? Yesterday at that very same meeting, someone got up at the mic and said, I don't want to walk into a service provider and feel like I'm a commodity. Like I'm just a number to be added to their database so that they can make their goals and objectives for their grant. I want to walk in and feel compassion. I want to feel like they care and that they have the same hopes and dreams for me that I have for myself. And I think that's where determination meets service and comes together in a real bond that will stick until the end.
I cannot think of any better closing comment. First of all, let me just thank you all. In the spirit of action, moving from dialogue to action, let me just say that everything that you have said as a grant maker actually sticks with me. We need to practice this. We need to empower organizations such as your own to really do what you need to do, free you up, to scale up, to do more, but we also need to lift up and invest more in telling the stories of the people who really, not just that your lives have been impacted, you're the role models now impacting others. So thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Is what it's worth. I mean, really. In just a minute here, I have Ted Beck, and I'm going to ask Lisa Hasegawa to also come up here and join us to talk a little bit about what it's worth to each of them. We also just had some really compelling examples of bravery. And so I'm going to ask you to start to feel a little brave. And in just a minute, I'm going to open those mics up for those of you who also want to share what it's worth to you. But before that, I'm going to actually invite Ted Beck here. Ted is the president and CEO of the National Endowment for Financial Education. And in that role, he has learned a thing or two about helping people build financial capability. In fact, when we approached Ted to say, we'd love for you to talk about a specific age group and what you've learned about working with that age group around financial issues, he came back to us with multiple ideas, and we had trouble narrowing his focus. But what he did focus on in the book really looks at older Americans and how the changes in the way that we learn and absorb information, changes as we age, affect how we interact in our financial lives, and offers some real solutions for what we can do about that. So I want to give the stage here to Ted for his reflection on what it's worth. Thanks, Ted.
Thanks, Kate. I also want to thank the participants in the last panel. That was really very good. Nicely done. I learned a lot, and I enjoyed it. So thank you. NEFI is actually my third career. And my first job, I was a banker. I was a banker at Citibank for over 20 years. And in that role, I helped very successful companies become more successful. And my second career was in academics. I was at the University of Wisconsin, and there I was able to help very bright young students and executives coming back really move up the corporate ladder. So for what it's worth to me, is I often used to ask myself the question, imagine if we could take what we do for successful companies and for successful people and reposition it for people who are struggling or who have limited resources. And NIFI, my organization, allows me to do that every day. So, what have we learned? Anybody who knows NIFI knows that we start with research. Otherwise, we're just wandering around in the dark hoping to bump into a good idea. So a national research agenda, I think, is a really critical thing, and I can't leave any stage I ever get to without saying that. So let's encourage research about what works. So what else have we learned? What are the big takeaways? And I'm very pleased to see that all of these themes that drive our work every day have been discussed in some way, shape, or form already today. So let's talk about this aging thing. We're all aging. And if you read the essay that the team at NIFI wrote, I wish I could say I wrote the whole thing, but it really was a team effort. It really looks at saying, okay, we should have our own plan. And we should communicate that plan to our families and people that we care about so that they can help us live out our financial lives. And as a quick aside, the young people at NIFI said, gee, Ted, we seem to be doing a lot of work on cognitive decline since you turned 60. And guess what? There's more coming. So this is just normal aging. So that's why we thought it was so important to write about what we think is a big national question. So that's our contribution to the book. But what are some other things that we think we really focus on in our work? And I'm repeating some things that are said earlier, but I think they're important. One size does not fit all. We all have different backgrounds. We all have different stories. We all have different goals. So when we're talking about financial capability or financial inclusion, whatever term you want, let's start with what those goals are for people. Let's not try to project our goals on others. That's just not a good game. So let's start with what works for people and don't assume your goals are a national standard. Second, our financial lives are rarely solo exercises. We do not make optimal decisions for ourselves. We try to make decisions to help our families. So in thinking about our work, we have really changed from thinking about individuals to thinking about what happens with families. And why do you maybe have to quit work because you've got to take care of somebody before you should, from an optimal income point of view. But families are important. Another thing is life happens. We're going to be releasing some research that we're funding next year that says 77% of American workers suffer on average 4 large income disruptions during their lives. But most of us assume we're not in that 77%. We're in that other group. So we're going to be okay. So why don't we face reality and try to build that sort of planning into the education we provide to people and the kind of programs? That way, if you go ahead and plan that you're going to suffer income disruption or job layoff or having to quit because somebody got sick in the family that you need to take care of, and if you're fortunate enough not to have that happen, you're just that much farther ahead. So, life happens. And financial education is important. Every young person in this country should have access to a high-quality, vetted, tested financial education program. That should just be a national standard. But that's not enough. It starts at home. Talk to your kids about money. So that's what it's worth to me. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ted, very much. And I want to echo your discussion of a national research agenda. I had asked Michael Sheridan to also come here and offer his what it's worth statement. He and Margaret Sheridan authored a very interesting call to action for the research community that is in the book as well, and I encourage you to check it out as we think about Ted's exhortation to have a national research agenda. I would like to welcome Lisa Hasegawa here as well. And as she's coming up here, I want to remind you that in just a minute, it's your turn to tell us what it's worth, and we'll be opening the mic for that. So Lisa is the Executive Director of the National Coalition for the Asian Pacific American Community Development. And as she talks about in her What It's Worth essay, she has spent her career focused on improving the lives of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, a group whose diversity and financial needs and the diversity of those financial needs are often overlooked. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you very much. I am Lisa Hasegawa. I'm the Director of National Capacity. That's our acronym, so you don't have to say the whole name of our organization. And I just wanted to thank everybody at CFED and the Federal Reserve for including us in this important publication. So often, Asian American and Pacific Islander voices and stories are not part of the narrative, and so I think it's just really great to be here with all of you and to hear sort of all of the other pieces and really great information that is in this publication. So I was really inspired because I think that our assignment was to sort of channel this I believe, right? And I'm a big fan of NPR, so here goes. So Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are a very diverse community. Over 30 languages, over 40 countries. There are over 2 million living in poverty, a number that's grown by nearly 50% in the wake of the recession, and we've lost nearly half of our wealth. We are immigrants, we are refugees. We are native peoples of Hawaii, and we are a community who has been here since the 1800s, like my own family. We are people of color. I lead the National Coalition for Asian Pacific American Community Development and represent a network of innovative community-based, multi-service organizations around the country, serving diverse, low-income Asian American and Pacific Islander communities that are co-located and living right next door to a lot of other low-income communities of color. We have faced historic discrimination from the stereotype of the perpetual foreigner that has created the segregated Chinatowns in this country, to the wealth stripping of Japanese Americans during World War II when they had to sell or abandon homes, treasured belongings, businesses, and land. Today, we face discrimination in a multitude of ways, manifested in the form of accent discrimination and lack of equal access to services due to language barriers in health, employment, and housing, and so many of the systems that we've been talking about here today. Where we do have data by subpopulations, we know that Native Hawaiians and Southeast Asians have some of the highest incarceration rates. And so in the states and the communities in which they are in, that is oftentimes not a story that you hear. But I say those things to say that, you know, in the communities and the organizations that we work with, we stand in solidarity with a lot of the issues that face other communities of color. We know that most alarming and more alarming these days, every day I'm becoming less and less of a fan of Facebook because all of the anti-immigrant sentiment and xenophobic sentiment and the rhetoric of policymakers, who I will not name, and the dramatic upswing of the hate crimes day after day against people in our community who are or are perceived to be Muslim, Arab, South Asian, Black, or brown. And I don't need a report to be absolutely certain that these things are contributing to discrimination in many of our communities. So all that's depressing, but I do have a lot of hope, and I just wanted to say that there have been some very positive things that have happened just in the last few months from our institutions. So we heard a panel just earlier about sort of individual stories, and I think that those are so important, and also the systems that create some of the challenges are also very important to name and to talk about. You know, Department of Housing and Urban Development just announced that they're going to be producing data on subpopulations of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in the American Housing Survey. So essentially, to this day, HUD has not known what is going on with our communities in any kind of nuanced way because we have not been included in any kind of an analyzable way in American Housing Survey. And the CFPB, some CFPB folks are here in the room. We just got an announcement about the rule on HMDA, that for the first time ever, HMDA data is going to be collected and be available by Asian American and Pacific Islander subpopulation. So those are some hopeful things that to me are some of the root causes of some of the systemic challenges that face our communities, oftentimes I think that that's because of the invisibility that we face because of the lack of data. So anyone doing research on wealth and assets, almost everyone here in this room, are looking at factors of race. And so we at Capacity see very clearly how structural racism driven by anti-Blackness disproportionately impacts the African American community, and then it really is a lever for the discrimination that faces so many communities of color. And so we add our voices to those that are trying to lift this reality up, and we also see that there are many who are trying to use the data about Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders to make the case that race no longer matters. So we are here to say that that is not the case, and I just want to give you a few examples of how. So API communities in the field of research and assets, as I said, have been oftentimes invisible or framed as doing well or better than white communities or the general population. This is often the default frame and the expected outcome when you're looking at numbers. This actively contributes to the theory that race doesn't matter. This is perhaps unintended, but I still hold that it is true that it adds to a very dangerous narrative. Numerous research reports and mainstream outlets proclaim that Asians are succeeding and leaping over barriers with a single bound. This story and narrative is somehow that with our superpowers, Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are magically overcoming their race and all of the barriers that are affiliated with that. And this is a very dangerous subtext, as I said before, that if API communities can overcome race, quote unquote, why can't other communities of color do the same? That's a very dangerous narrative. And so I say to all of you who are doing research that, I know that none of you want to contribute to this narrative, right, that race doesn't matter. I think that we agree that it does. And so I would say that, all of the excuses that I so often hear, or the challenges that I hear, API community is so small, it's diverse, it's complicated, it doesn't fit into our charts, we'll have to add more pages to our report, we're not convenient, right? We're not convenient. I get that, but we have to look at the influences of immigration policy that skews immigration towards those who have more wealth in our community. We have to look at API subpopulations. We have to look at generational differences. So just to conclude, I do think that some of these are these structural issues. I wanted to sort of talk about sort of the broader frames. And, please, my challenge to all of you is to consider the way that you collect data, analyze data on race, assets, and wealth. Think about how that may or may not be contributing to that larger narrative about communities of color. Please don't use Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders to add to that narrative that race no longer matters. We have to continue to call that out. There are many ways. I think it was very exciting as a public health person. I loved the morning's conversation about the intersections with health, and I can tell you that the health research community is way ahead of the health and housing, the housing and asset building community in terms of Asian American and Pacific Islander research. So I would say race still matters. We're really thrilled about the new policy developments that we heard from HUD and CFPB. And for me, I know this is not simple, but it's critical, and to me, it's worth it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So that was, I think, 2 thought-provoking takes on what it's worth. Who has something else to say about what it's worth to you, or a comment on what we've just heard today? Be brave. We've got mics. I know all of you. You have lots to say. Oh, good, Ellen. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ellen Lazar. I'm a board member of CFED, and I've worked in the community development and affordable housing world for many years. And I thought, as I've been listening to this all day, I keep thinking how important it would be for some of our political candidates to be hearing some of this. We're in the midst of a kind of very, very dynamic political season. That's the best I could say about it. And there's an opportunity here. So many of us have worked on federal programs that are important, have seen the efficacy of those programs over time. And, we have a big, I was thinking about this morning as we were talking about home ownership, as Congressman Lazio was so articulate about home ownership, that this is an opportunity for us to really weigh in on what future tax legislation is going to look like. And, you know, this is our chance to be very, very vocal and help raise these issues to the national agenda. And I hope you'll all be part of that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ellen. Thank you. Thank you for your bravery. I appreciate it. And we'll have some more opportunities in a little bit. Two matters of housekeeping. I know some of you, certainly those on the webcast, have been tweeting a few questions that we haven't been able to get to. Don't worry, you can also send questions to news@cfed.org, and we'll also pass them on to panelists and find ways to enrich the conversation ongoing throughout the year. Also, some of you in the room and some of you on the webcast have asked whether there's video being taken today and whether that will be archived. The answer is yes. So the videos will be available in about a week's time, and certainly we'll get information out to people when those are available to see. So I'm also being told that today is a really important day, not just because we're launching What It's Worth, but because it's National Brownie Day. So with that, I think it's time for us all to take a break, have a sweet, get some coffee, and come back here in about 15 minutes. Thanks.